Hi, I'm Joe Foster. I'm the founder of Reebok, and it's such a pleasure to be on Ryan Holtz
Show podcast.
Perfect. Show podcast. On Ryan Holtz Show podcast. Well, for me, the brand was everything. It was something that you start something, you give it a name, and the last thing you need to do is confuse people.
We into a wider audience, not just on the athletic side, but you mentioned Cardi B, which is kind of funny to me.
It is. It's pop culture. It's fashion. It's where you are today. People are looking at this. Fewer and fewer people are, I will say, reading newspapers. They're looking at their mobile phones, or they're looking at laptops. When you think about it, this is fairly new. I think COVID has probably moved it along 10 years. And it was in Edmonton that we launched our Aztec shoe. It was a success in Edmonton. Our gold range was a success in Edmonton.
I'll get started then. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Ryan Holtz Show podcast. Today, I have the most amazing guest. But before we get to that, if you've not left a 5-star review on iTunes, please do so. And if you would like to see the full video version of this podcast, please go to youtube.com/Ryan Holtz, and you'll be able to see everything. I am standing here at 8:04 a.m. Canadian time. Joe, what time is it where you are? You're in France right now, correct?
I'm in France right now, and it's 4 p.m.
So Joe's winding towards the end of his business day. I'm just starting over here. Joe Foster is the founder of Reebok, and here's what's really crazy about this. I seen Joe from an interview he did on Brad Lee's Dropping Bombs show, and the first thing I thought to myself was, the founder of Reebok. And I just thought, is Brad lying to all of us about who the founder of Reebok is? Because I thought, I know Reebok, but I just never knew the founder. And it's really interesting because it segues into my first question for Joe. But before we get to that, Joe, welcome to the show, my friend.
Right. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. It really is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I own a marketing agency, and I mean, we're always big on brand. And it's interesting because back in the day, if you ever had an employee or a team member try to put themselves, quote unquote, above the brand, they would be fired. And now, given modern day technology, which Joe's talked, at length about in several interviews, we have something called personal branding, where you're seeing a lot of the people behind the brand really come out into the forefront of the brand, ultimately humanizing the almighty logo. So, Joe, you talk a lot about you saying, hey, I wanted to build the brand and the story about why people need to Reebok as opposed to the Joe Foster show, per se. Why was that such a major thing for you at that time?
Well, for me, the brand was everything. It was something that you start something, you give it a name, and the last thing you need to do is confuse people. We do have the J.W. Foster brand, which was started by my grandfather way back in 1895. But in order to get the story over, or to get the brand over, you don't need to be up there in front of the brand saying, I am Joe Foster and this is my brand. No, the brand is just the important one. People just want to hear the name. They don't want confusion. So for me, it was a matter of you step back and you get the brand, the brand first. So people really fall in love with the brand, just as I did way back in 1960.
Now you have a book called The Shoemaker, which I'm going to put all the description and links in the show notes so everybody can go and check out and get a copy. And it's kind of, my take on the book is, it's kind of a monologue of kind of a story about, hey, this is what kind of went on behind the scenes. And I'm Joe Foster, and I'm one of the founders of a massive, billion-dollar brand. Could you speak a little bit about the motivation, why in, October 2020 that you said, hey, I'm going to actually come out and release a book now after all of these years?
Well, it was 7 years before that when I made that statement to myself, and it took 7 years to get that book into print. Being a shoemaker, I experienced all the experiences in there, but writing a book is a little bit different because you tend to understate certain things. You tend to go into anecdotes and things rather than the story. So it took about 5 years, I think, to get through all that, and then it's been 2 years to get publishing, and so it took me a long while. I probably am not a natural writer, but it's you need to get the right story over. And one of the reasons for that story is that so many people will see so many variations wherever you see it, and I thought, no, it's about time we told the true story. Some people think that we just changed the name of J.W. Foster. And there are so many areas that people said, oh, we started in this place, we did this. But this story, this is actually what happened. And so the story is out there to say, this is where Reebok came from. And this is my story. So, yeah, I say 7 years ago, not just 3 months ago.
Well, there's two questions that come to mind. I mean, number one is, it takes 5 years to write the book. Did you manage to come up with a system of saying, no, Joe, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 a.m., I need to put my pen to paper? And of course you get writer's block and you write something and you're like, this doesn't even reflect remotely what happened in the story. And you're not a professional writer, so there's a lot of rough drafts. Did Julie kind of knock on your shoulder and say, hey man, I'm keeping you accountable. You need to get this project finished and completed. We're going to set a deadline, or me and you are going to be having some disciplinary measures put on you?
Well, not really. I don't think, being a shoemaker, having a story, there was no writer's block. That was not a problem. It was, there were too many stories. They just get covered. And the problem is that you get so far down a storyline, and all of a sudden you think, just a minute, we also did this. We also, now, how do I make this into a story? Because you don't just go down one line. It's just not one step in front of the other. There are side steps. There are different things that happen in your life. And it's how do you bring this in? What is important? What is not? And so it was a matter of putting as many stories as I could out, getting them in some chronological order, and then trying to make that into a book which made good reading and made sense. And so I needed help. I needed people to say, you don't need that, you didn't need this, and make more of that, because that's an important area of you. So it took some time to get it down, and no writer's block. And in terms of discipline, I think really it was, I don't think anyone was to discipline me. I think I was trying myself to get it right. And so getting it right meant I had to stop on numerous occasions and rethink, does this belong here? Did I make that journey at this time? Did I meet so-and-so at this time? And it's surprising. The thing, the place, but slowly. And you need help.
You mentioned earlier about the fact that you said, hey, there's been so many different versions of the story told by other people, some not even a part of the story, that you said, you know what, it's about time I tell the full story and the real story. And that comes down to narrative, and in 2020, with social media and technology, what we're finding is that there's so many different narratives around a story. Some are false, some are true. I don't even know if there's 4 sides to a story anymore. There's like 24 sides to a story, it seems nowadays. I guess I'm trying to frame the question as, a lot of people used to say, listen, I don't want to put my whole life on social media. I'm very private. Some things I hold true. But now you're starting to see more and more people that historically have been very quiet start to come out using social media and really saying, I am going to control my own narrative. Was there any kind of, prompt or motivation for you when you said, hey, I've read so many different versions. Was there any single thing that you said, I'm going to go and write the full story? Was there anything to really prompt you to do that?
I think it's a process. I think that over the years, so many people will come up and say, a lot of friends, a lot of former work people would come and say, why don't you write your story? You should write your story. It's always been my ambition. Well, it was Reebok. Reebok is so important. But Reebok has gone through so many things, and even now, it is owned by Adidas. So it's going through all this, and people say things. Well, I didn't know you did that, and I would say, well, we didn't. You only need to look up Wikipedia. Wikipedia has a photograph of Joe Foster. I don't even know who that person is. Who is that person? And you think, well, surely it's time to get this story correct, to get it straight. It's not a question of saying everybody needs to know Joe Foster. They don't. But I think everybody needs to know, where did Reebok come from? What's the history? And it is a family history. It is a Foster family history. And I've just previously, it goes back to my grandfather making himself a pair of spike running shoes in 1895. He was a real pioneer of spike running shoes and athletic shoes. And I think he actually is credited with the invention of the training shoe. And you read his history, and his history is incredible. Had he been around at this time, everybody would have known Joe Foster. But he was in an era where, you think of the first part of the 20th century, really, up to World War II. How did you get your information? Not a great deal. When I started out in 1958, we didn't have computers. We didn't have mobile telephones. When I'm traveling, if I had to do something, I had to go. You could write a letter, but letters, talking about 2 weeks in between writing and anybody coming back to you.
Yes.
And telephone, okay, if you sat behind a desk, as we are now, you have a telephone, and yes, somebody can call you. But how do you make that connection to begin with? You've got to make. So I was jumping on an airplane. It was going places. It was going to the NSGA shows in Chicago. So in those days, so different. Today, technology is different. Now it's technology. And I think that while a lot of people are writing books, and today, while a lot of people are now out in front, is because of this technology and COVID. A lot of people go anywhere, so let's do something different.
Yeah. You make such
it's helping.
you make such a great point. I want to ask you something on this. So you make such a strong point. Back in the day when you're building a brand years and decades ago, no instant access to anybody. You had to do it the old school way where you have to put, feet to pavement and go out and get your product out there. I know you're at a different age and a different stage of your life now, but let's assume that you had access to all these different mediums, podcasting and social media and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. How might you reach out to somebody now? Like if somebody was to play kind of a role play with you and say, Joe, let's take some of your tactics that you used to get your brand out there when you were starting, but let's replace say the airplane with say Instagram direct message. How would you maybe use some of these tools now to your benefit to maybe make some of your cause more efficient and get to more people with maybe a little less effort?
Well, it's probably a question which is difficult to answer because, you go through your life and you do what you do. To try and replace that and do it again is it's like in two different worlds.
Yes.
We play soccer in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
Football. You probably call football in Canada anyway. And you go back 50 years and you see the guys playing on the pitches, which are full of mud. They're heavy. They have a leather ball, which is when it rains a lot in the United Kingdom. It gets so heavy and wet. And you look at the pitches today. The pitches today, they're just so perfect. They drain the water away. The ball is so light. It's such a different game. So, and people say, well, would not Loftout, would Finney, what would they be like on today's pitches? And, who were the best footballers? Were these the best footballers in 20s and 30s or are the best footballers now? And they're different games. So things have moved on. So to try and sort of say, well, what would you do now? Number one, I'd be 50 years younger.
Yes.
I'd be more energetic. I'd have a different, like you, I'd be there. Let's look at this. Let's make something of it. This is now a business. Podcasts are a business now. Passing on this information. This has taken over newspapers, listening or watching the television. These things are happening. And so it's a totally different situation. And maybe if I was 50 years younger, I would be looking at this and saying, what am I doing? Am I making footwear or am I doing something else? And I don't think I'd be making footwear. I don't think I'd be in sports footwear at this age now, trying to set up a footwear brand now. That's going to be difficult right now, but it's not impossible. And it depends where you're coming from. New sport, new ideas. And as we were talking about the pitch that people play on now, as against 50 years ago, is so different. So the physique is so different. I mean, the guys were, I think, heavier then in terms of football, and it was more contact, and certainly it was a different game. So I think it's a different game now if it comes to business. And I'm sure I'll be thinking something differently.
Absolutely. What's amazing is, you look at access to people, even for instance, how instant technology flows. I seen you on Brad Lee's show. I think it was a little clip on LinkedIn, and I just thought, oh my God, I'd love to have Joe on my show. And I sent a direct message, I think 30 seconds after I seen that clip, and you got back to me 5 minutes later. I mean, so the speed in which you can get to somebody is absolutely incredible. At what point have you been sitting back, kind of looking at everything? Because obviously you haven't been involved with business for some time. But has there been any moments, or maybe a combination of moments, where you said, wow, the way humans are communicating, the way we're doing press and media is changing? When did you really kind of say, I think I'm going to get involved with that? And of course you have a book and you're saying, hey, I want to get out there and I need to get my book out there and do some media interviews. But you've been in the game a long time. So for you, when did you really notice, wow, the tides are really shifting?
Well, we've been, you can't help but see the moves, the changes. You can't help but see that. You see it all the time. And I've been watching Reebok. Reebok's changed. We used to be in performance, but with Adidas, I think the decision of Adidas is which one of us does the performance. And of course, they bought Reebok, so it's their privilege. So they do the performance, and so they get seen. The visibility is through performance, through supporting football clubs, and then they do the replica shirts, things like that. So that's where they're. With Reebok, they've moved over more to sponsoring people like.
Well, you mentioned Cardi B, you mentioned street, right? you mentioned to get that kind of notoriety and to get that wider audience, you can't just stick into the performance lane. You have to go into, I call it culture, pop culture. You really have to touch into a wider audience, not just on the athletic side. But you mentioned Cardi B, which is kind of funny to me.
Well, it is funny. I think it's one of the latest sponsorships that Reebok have done, but it's pop culture, it's fashion, it's where you are today. People are looking at this. Fewer and fewer people are, I will say, reading newspapers. They're looking at their mobile phones, or they're looking at laptops. and this is where the impressions come from. So people have to follow, where do the impressions come? Okay, performance sport is still heavily watched and is still a big influencer, but people like Cardi B, when we have a lot of other, Ariana Grande, they did some sponsorship with Ariana Grande. Excuse me. So this is the way they've moved Reebok. To me, I think it's growing, and coronavirus has made it even more it's made a bigger audience, because people now, you can't go out, you can't do visits, you can't travel. So people have to come onto their computers. And the number of Zoom interviews that I've done in the last 3 months is incredible. And it's amazing. You're sitting there in Vancouver, how many miles away? Probably 6,000, something like that. 6,000, and we're having a chat. And it's just as though we're in the office together.
Yes.
Well, for me, I had to take that flight.
Yeah.
I'd have to do that 6,000 miles at one time. So now we're totally in a different world, and this is where Reebok now, they've been seen because, I mean, the choice was to put Reebok in the fitness area. Like, okay, aerobics was probably where Reebok really hit the ground running, and that's where Reebok became a really large company, and that was Hollywood and all the Hollywood A-listers that were wearing Reebok. That just spread, fantastic. So Adidas was sort of saying, well, why don't we sort of develop Reebok through the fitness scene? But the fitness scene, it's not, you don't go and watch fitness. You know, you watch a football game, you watch a baseball game, watch a basketball game.
Yes.
Not many people watch fitness. It's something that you have to say, well, who's in fitness? Right in those early days, Reebok had Jane Fonda. When the aerobic scene came, she was wearing Reeboks in her videos.
Yes.
So yeah, and the videos are being watched by people who wanted to follow this new fitness scene. So I think that it is an area where Reebok are now growing, and it's something really it's fairly new. When you think about it, this is fairly new. I think COVID has probably moved it along 10 years.
Yes.
It's all of a sudden we're all able to use this medium because, you know, people, we used to have video conferences on occasions, but getting a video conference was so difficult, so awkward. And you didn't really meet the people because the people were not relaxed. The people were sort of thinking, well, I'm just talking to a piece of glass here, it's a screen in front of me, and I'm not getting over my story. I think now people can because it's so easy. You're on Zoom, you're on Skype, you're on whatever it is. And the way that business is being done, it's all now on the internet, shopping on the internet. I mean, it's just incredible. You were talking about Julie. Yeah, Julie shops on the internet all the time. It's so easy. We got a delivery about 2 or 3 hours ago. You don't have to go anywhere. It comes to your door.
No.
And, you know, incredible.
Julie sounds like my wife because I tell her, I said, honey, I'm here. I'm trying to make money for our family. And as I'm making money talking to Joe Foster, founder of Reebok, she's probably buying some stuff on Amazon. I can hear the guys start to deliver it out of the house. But it's interesting because you bring up a good topic. For our long distance clients, one of the hardest things to do prior to COVID was, have long distance clients that we would consult for, because they'd say, Ryan, I want you to visit me at my place of business and I want to see you in the flesh. And we'd say, well, we can get everything done because we're digital marketers. Our product is all on the internet. We can do stuff for anybody around the world. And now they're saying, don't come, Ryan. Don't come to our establishment. Stay away. We're more than happy to do a video conference with you. And you do see that shift in what COVID has done. You mentioned anaerobics and Reebok, and that was by far the biggest bump for Reebok. That kind of catapulted you guys into something that was very, very special. And you talk a lot about the impact of luck and also timing. My 2 words that I really love are curiosity and passion. But for me, I always say ditch the passion and focus on the curiosity. And the reason I say that is I think curiosity gets you through the punches in the mouth. I think when passion, we don't wake up as humans every day and feel passionate. It's impossible every day to wake up and feel passionate, I think, because I feel that there's so many additives and so many elements to life that can knock the passion out even momentarily. But what I feel really does keep us going is the curiosity to say, what if we do this? What if we show up? What if we could get our brand into that place? What would you say about kind of stacking up passion versus curiosity for you in your journey in creating, what very little of the human population will ever create, which is $1 billion company. And that's the facts. I mean, you're one of the few that's going to go in the history books, right? What would you say to somebody if you say, should you hedge your bet on passion or should you hedge your bet on curiosity?
Yeah. Well, I mean, question like that, certainly for me, passion is is very important. Curiosity, maybe you just put your nose in and you say, well, okay, interesting, go away. If you've got passion, you don't go away. The curiosity may sort of raise a bit of interest, but I think the passion is so important. When we have problems, Jeff and myself, we left the parent company and we set up as Mercury Sports Footwear. And 18 months later, we ran into trouble. You've probably seen it's in the book. I don't know if you've read it or not. We had this problem. We got to change our name. And okay, I was told to find 10 names and go and see if the registrar would accept them. and it was because in 1943, as a youngster of 8 years old, I'd won a book. It wasn't a book. It was a dictionary. It was a Webster's dictionary, an American dictionary. Why an American dictionary? I don't know, during the World War II, but it was. And I liked the letter R and thumbing through just to sort of say, let's see if I can find anything here. I found the word Reebok, a small South African gazelle. Gazelle. That fast. That sounds good. So I took this to the registrar. I took it to an agent for the registrar, and I pointed at it. I said, look, here's 10 names. These are birds and these are animals. But this is Reebok, and I want this. We found it, and we need to be in love with it. It needs to be our passion, because if we're going to be successful, we're going to love it. We've got to love it. And I think that's the beginning of where we start off and say, well, Reebok takes over. J.W. Foster, yes, that was a company. And in Wikipedia, you'll read that, the grandsons came along and they renamed the company from J.W. Foster and Sons to Reebok, because that was a much better name. Well, it was a much better name. But the thing is that was the name that we needed people to pick up on. It was easy to say, Reebok. It sounded good. And so the J.W. Foster brand, it's still a company. It still is there. And I think the shoes now, if you can get hold of a pair of shoes, I think you pay over $1,000. I think you pay these days to find one of the J.W. Foster shoes, because they're a pretty rare species now. But Reebok was it. And so for me, passion. Curiosity is okay, but for me, it's passion. Once you found something, curiosity does to me sort of lead me down a route of different choices, going different places, because I'm curious. But when it comes to passion, it means devotion. It means single-mindedness. It means something that you drive. I don't think you can drive curiosity, but you can drive a passion.
Interesting. Okay. I like that. What would you say? It's interesting because I look at the thing that you say a lot, which I find very interesting, because the topic of sales comes into play, especially when people are building good companies. And you say, you've said, hey, I was an average salesperson, but what I love about what you said is you said, I want to tell the story enough so that our end user or consumer actually says, I would like to wear Reebok, which is going to force any retailer to say, well, if my customers are coming in asking about this product, maybe we need to carry this product. So you said, I wanted to build a brand that people would come to buy from me, not me necessarily sell it into their stores per se. How did you kind of come up with that concept, especially back then? It seems, I think people listening to the show right now would say, well, that makes sense. But, it's actually quite complex back then when I think about it, because you're very smart in saying, I'm going to go direct to consumer. And when we look at present day modern companies, let's say like Amazon and Jeff Bezos, well, what is Amazon? He's a trillionaire because he created something that goes direct to consumer in a fast, efficient way. How for you did you kind of come up with such a concept like that all the way back then?
Well, for me, I think you touched on it earlier that I'm not a good salesman, but I was the only one that we had. And I would go into to the retailer. And in those days, we had small stores. There were small sports stores, and they carried everything from a piece of chalk for a snooker cue, a pool cue, anything like that, to whatever, football boots, footballs, everything. And I would go in and I'd say, look, I'm from Reebok. And they'd say, who? I said, Reebok. And what do you do? And I bring out my shoes. We're a sports shoe manufacturer, and we do this, this, and this. And he looked at me and he said, well, Joe, I've got Adidas. I've got Dunlop. Why do I need Reebok? And that was the question. When he said, why do I need Reebok? That sort of, and I could stand there and say, why? Why do you need Reebok? And the only reason he would need Reebok is if some people came in and asked him for Reebok. If there was a demand. If there's no demand, why should he sell my product? I'm trying to sell it to him. I'm not a good salesman. He doesn't need to sell the product. I think some retailers did sell products. Some retailers were good, but they had to believe in the product as well.
Yeah.
He had no reason to believe in Reebok. Why should he believe in Reebok? If he'd heard that somebody just broken a 4-minute mile in Reebok, oh, well, yes, he had a story. But we had a story. I was just selling what I thought was good shoes. And so I had to answer the question why. And to do that, we used to go around to athletic meetings, to cross-country and road meetings that, and in the north of England where we were, of course, we were selling direct to athletes and they were wearing our shoes. And I would see them going past and I said, that's my answer. Why does he need them? These are my customers. These athletes are my customers. So it was getting to those customers. And I was very lucky because in the United Kingdom, we had the 3As, which is the Amateur Athletic Association, the handbook. And that handbook had 300-400 names and addresses of secretaries of every club in the country.
Oh, well, okay.
That was a matter of sending a letter and just writing, offering a discount, offering a nice direct sort of business between the two. They could use the money to put into the sort of club funds because most athletic clubs really didn't have much money. So a little bit of money, that helped. I got well over 100 agents, well over, and that was the start. And our business was direct. And yes, the stores, the retailers started to phone me and say, we understand that you're selling Reebok direct to clubs. And if you stop selling to clubs, I'll stock your shoes. Well, okay. So I'd succeeded in one thing, and that is giving him a reason to stock the shoes. But then I said, no, I'm not going to stop selling direct. So I said, look, with you, you're a retailer. We respect that. And we sell these shoes to you at wholesale price. I only give a very small discount to the athletic clubs. And if you want to buy the shoes, we'll certainly will supply you. But I'm not stopping what I'm doing now with clubs. And about 60-70% of the retailers decided, okay, we'll take some shoes. Because in those days, I don't think that the mail service was that good. It's much better today. And I think people also didn't trust the idea, especially a pair of shoes, that when they got them with the right size. And what do we do with the right size? We have to start sending them back again. So a lot of people did like to go to the sports store and buy there. So we built up this this relationship both with the retailer and our consumer, the consumer being the athlete.
You know what's amazing is you're a humble man, and it's interesting because do you ever ask yourself what makes Joe Foster different than the other few billion people that are residing on this planet? Because it's interesting how character. My wife and I, we talk a lot, and we always we'll meet some people, and I'm like, why is this person so cranky? And then why is this person so happy? And it could be an 80-year-old person. We've traveled a lot of places in the world. We love Madrid and San Sebastian, Spain, and the Amalfi Coast. And it's amazing when I tell people, get out and travel the world. Obviously not right now, but travel the world to see different perspectives, lifestyles, how people live. The character you were back then, building a business, you still see a lot of, and it's true, success always leaves clues. Because you still see a lot of those clues in your DNA at the age you are now. One thing comes to mind is you're always willing to pivot, open-mindedness to try new things, podcasting, you're sitting in front and talking to a talking to a computer box. Such a different feeling. Like I'm talking to a computer box, but this computer box can get me a megaphone out to the world, literally. What have you ever sat back and said, what makes me different? Is it luck? Is it, the good Lord above has, blessed you with certain genetics? Is it, all the above? Have you ever kind of thought about that? Like more of an introspective perspective on yourself?
Well, I think you touched on it yourself when you said, is it luck? To me, it is luck. But luck is a matter of opportunities. A lot of people don't know if there's an opportunity comes along. If you see it, then it's luck. I mean, some of the opportunities that we saw, maybe would pass a lot of people, and they didn't know. If the opportunity passes, opportunities pass people all the time. There's opportunity in front there. If it's there for you, then fine. But what is luck? I mean, look, in the 1970s, I needed to expand our business. We were in the running business in the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, when Jeff and I started the company, we'd missed out on the football because by that time Adidas had taken it over. So to fight Adidas with soccer, football, boots, and that would have been impossible. But we knew the athletics market. We knew where to go in, but it was small. The athletics market was in America, and in America, and the British government decided they would like to see the sports industry export, and there's a free stand at the NSGA show in Chicago, the return airfare, and half of our hotel bill. Well. That's a nice piece of luck. Why at that time did they come along? But I did see it, and I did sort of say, wow, we'll take that. And in 1968, I'm in America. And also what happened in the 1970s, running became a category that just grew. It exploded in America. Running became a massive, massive business. We were in running. We were perceived as a running company. Clark's tried to get into that market. But Clark's are a street shoe. People they knew anything about running. But we had been really impressing people. We'd been fighting above our weight for a long time, but we were known as a running company. We knew our market. So people accepted us. And so during the 70s, and then the invitation to go to America. But although I went in 1968, it was 1979 before I actually broke into the market. 11 years, and 6 failed attempts, at least 6 failed attempts with other people trying to get them in. And I needed to find the hook. I wanted the key. And what was the key? The key was in Runner's World. Runner's World shoes. They started off rating 1, 2, 3, 4, which didn't work. But they rated them in star ratings, and 5-star was the best shoe. I needed a 5-star shoe. And it was in Edmonton that we launched our Aztec shoe. Well, we launched the gold range, and Aztec was one of the gold range, and that was the training shoe, which we knew. We got that, we would have a tremendous market. And it was success in Edmonton. Our gold range was a success in Edmonton Commonwealth Games. We got a lot of gold medals. We got a lot of good results. 1979, I showed this at the February Chicago show, and this is where I got Paul Fireman. I got Kmart. Kmart wanted 25,000 pairs, but at a better price. 25,000 were too big for our production, but I knew I had friends that I could get production from. Price, we had to go to the Far East. And the Far East, we could get the price. So things were happening all at once. By 1979, 1980, everything was happening for Reebok. But we got a 5-star rating in the 1979 Runner's World magazine that they brought out where they were rating shoes. I phoned Paul Fireman because we got to know each other all the time. He said, I'd love to be your distributor, but we need a 5-star shoe. I said, Paul, hold on. We got to wait till the magazine comes out. And on that morning, I knew the magazine was out. And I phoned him. I think it was lunchtime for me, but it was only 7 o'clock in the morning for Paul. So and I asked him, go down to the kiosk. The magazine's going to be on the kiosk. We couldn't get it in the UK for another week or two. So Paul came back about an hour later. Joe said, Aztec, you got 5 stars. Oh, brilliant. But not only that, your other two shoes too. The other one was Inca was a spike, and Midas was a racing shoe, and they both got 5 stars as well. So we had 3 5-star shoes,
Yes.
and that was we knew that meant we had business in America.
Yes.
And in it.
Very interesting,
Yeah.
Joe. I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We still live there portion of the time, but I was born in '84, so I was barely born. But that was always running. That was running rampant, pun intended, in the Wayne Gretzky days as well, right, for hockey. So it's interesting how you're saying Edmonton, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second. It's amazing how big the world is, but it's also quite small.
Isn't it just?
It is.
It is quite small when you really think about it. It is quite small, and I think it's small because of similar people. The people that or the people that are in have similar thinking to you, do things that your area. It's not one of the 7 billion people in the world. There's probably only maybe 500 million, which is a lot of people who probably live on your level, your planet. But that's why it's small, because they're all over the country, they're all over the world. And providing you can link in with those people, and they have similar thoughts. And so for us, we got the key in America. And I think over a period of 10 years, maybe less, 60% of America wore Reebok shoes.
Wow.
And that came about with aerobics, because we were doing very nice with those Aztecs. Our business and running was really growing nicely in America. There was a guy, Arnold Martinez. I don't know if you've heard of Arnold Martinez. But he was the tech rep down in Los Angeles. And his wife, Frankie, she was going to these aerobic classes. And she came back and with her girlfriends, and they were really full of it. Really full of it. They were saying, wow, it's fantastic. And Arnold saying, what is it? What's fantastic? And we're saying, well, yeah, you say, what are you doing? Well, we're actually exercising to music, and it's fantastic. Really is great. So Arnold thought he needed to have a look at this. And he went down to the next class, saw the instructor was doing this in running shoes. Half the class were in running shoes or plimsolls. The other half of the class had no shoes at all. He saw an opportunity. Why don't we make a shoe just for this aerobics? Fantastic. Went to Paul Feynman and said, Paul, look, this is happening down here in Los Angeles. I think it's going to be big, but it's fantastic. And Paul said, no. Look, we're doing really good. We're doing really good with running. Why do we play around making a few shoes for something that's happening in Los Angeles? Arnold didn't take no for an answer. He just went round to the back door to talk to the production people. And he did persuade. He was very persuasive. And he persuaded to give him 200 pairs, get him 200 pairs of these nice shoes in glove leather. And he spread those around the instructors down there in Los Angeles. And some of the, so obviously Frankie got a pair as well. But he was in the right place. All of a sudden, A-listers started to see this. As we were saying, it was a Jane Fonda. Then Sigourney Weaver was picking up Emmy in Reebok Felt. And the whole thing. It took a little while. It wasn't quite overnight, but the spread, once it got going, it was incredible. It took the company from $9 million to something like $30 million, then $90 million, then $300 million, and $900 million in successive years. That was the tremendous growth at the time. So yes, a lot of people. And of course, we went into tennis and then into classics. And that became, everybody wore them for street and travel. So it was an incredible growth. But, it's that key. So there were 2 keys there. One, to get the running, to get into that market. And 2, Arnold was lucky enough to be there in LA. So again, we talk about luck. You have to see opportunities.
You do. Have you ever heard of a gentleman named Seth Godin? He's a best-selling author known for marketing. He's out of New York. Seth Godin.
No, I don't know him, no.
Okay, Seth Godin, we call him, well, in North America, we call him one of the godfathers of marketing for sure, but he was on the show and he said, you know, a big thing I'm very big on, especially with the listeners that listen to the show, because you have a lot of people who are doing very good business. Some people are starting out in business, is the idea of relationships, you know, how to build good relationships. Because a lot of what you've said, this whole interview is very, you know, circled around relationships. And I'm a firm believer nobody likes to be hustled. You know, nobody likes to feel like they're being hustled in any kind of relationship. It's not going to end well. For you, especially when, and you know, Joe, there's levels to the game, right? You're the rookie, maybe you're mid-range, maybe you're the leader, and sometimes it's a sliding scale. Maybe you're the leader and then you fall into second place. Hell, maybe you're not even in the arena. You didn't see that coming. But there's levels to the game. How would you, or what advice could you give a listener that says, well, Joe, I'm starting out. I don't have a lot of credibility yet, but I'm trying to build relationships with people who maybe are closer to where I would like to be. How would you tell them to make themselves, I don't know, quote unquote, valuable, or to get in the right room, as you said, with the right like-minded people? What is there some things that you could say to them to do to really enhance their relationship building capabilities?
Well, I think you have to consider, you know, what are the influences? You know, what influences what you want? Where is it? Who influences it? How do they influence it? And how can you get in there and become part of that influence? You've got to figure that out. This is up to you. I don't know. When we knew that we had to influence the runners, we had to influence them to buy our shoes. And you know, these days. Okay, street is being influenced, as we talked earlier about Cardi B and others. You know, the street is being influenced. But in those days, before we see what we're seeing now, sport was the one thing. It's on television. You know, 100,000 people go to watch a soccer match or whatever. They are influenced by the names, whatever players. In fact, I had a word. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying about running shoes or about sports footwear in general. And they were saying, look, if you took the swoosh of a Nike shoe, what does it look like? The shoe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So you get in that people, you put it in people's minds. These are the images. You think of, you know, and you don't play with that. You think of Ford, immediately what comes in mind? It comes in that oval, nice blue, and the lettering. You know what Ford looks like, and it's the same with Reebok. We took a little bit of time. We went through a few ups and downs to get our silhouette, but we got the vector silhouette, and we got the lettering, the Montotectura with the drop R, and that became, like, it did become whatever in those early days of Reebok in America. When I went to Paul Fireman and we had the Starcrest, he said, that looks a lot like the Union Jack. Yeah, I said it. He said, why don't we use the Union Jack? I said, I have no problem using the Union Jack. It won't work very well back in England, because if we have Union Jack shoes and they're made in Korea, there'll be a lot of discontent from the unions. But what Paul said to me was, again, quite interesting. He said, well, you know, we're going to have to spend millions to get people to recognize the Starcrest. He said, but everybody in America, everybody recognizes the Union Jack, which, you know, okay, you think, well, you know, most people would recognize the Stars and Stripes, but to say everybody recognizes the Union Jack, I thought was a bit sort of bit strong, but everybody did recognize the Union Jack. And what's more, it became such a tremendous point of sale. We had our shoes at the Union Jack on each one of the shoes, and the box had a Union Jack. And we didn't have point of sales. In those early days, you don't have that. But the retailers used to stack the boxes in a pyramid. The Union Jack on every box in the window with a shoe on each of the boxes as it went up the pyramid. It was incredible. Nearly every retailer decided they'd use that idea. So these are they could see this. And of course, the Union Jack just sort of brought the name Reebok to the forefront. So there are different things that happen. And although we don't use the Union Jack. Well, I say we don't. It's still on a lot of the classics. Still on a lot of the classics. But when Adidas bought the company, they decided to use the Delta instead of the Vector. The Vector being well known. They also changed the lettering. And to me, it's no wonder that the brand stalled. The brand, but over the last 2 or 3 years, they have a new marketing man, and the marketing man, same approach to this that I do. They've come back with the correct lettering, the lettering that really grew the brand, and they've come back with the Vector. And now this is what we're seeing. And I can always guarantee you the brand is beginning to grow again. It's beginning to be. And what do we have now? We have the internet. We have what's going on. And so I think the world is playing its way into where Reebok are right now. And so I think we might see this brand really come back. In fact, if they ask me and they want my help, I'm there. and I hope that the book just gives a little bit of a push. Lets people sort of read it and see, this brand has a history. It has a history of 1895, Chariots of Fire. Those runners that were immortalized won their medal in the 20s in J.W. Foster's. And J.W. Foster, we made Reebok. So, there's a longevity for the brand. And I think people will recognize that. And so, add the good things together. Forget some of the bad things, but that's in life. And I think that maybe COVID gives Reebok a bit of a push. Maybe there's a bit. So, who knows?
I put out to social media. We got lots of questions back. But Ann O'Neill asked a great question. She used to play in the WNBA, so I actually fired her a message and I said, "What mattered the most in a shoe when you're playing basketball on the court?" So she asked the question. She said, "I would love to know how they develop the writing personalization on shoes, and what kind of brand loyalty it's created. I used to write with magic markers different words on mine prior to playing in games just to give inspiration." And she said she's a little superstitious.
Well, superstition is very good. It is very good. The reason Nike have a swoosh is the reason that Reebok have a Vector and that Adidas have 3 stripes. Yes. This is the inspiration, because that either Bryant, Kobe Bryant, all these top players, they wore shoes like this, so they must be good. Yes. They must work. And if you believe that that's the psychology. The psychology is if it worked for them, it could work for me, and it will work for me. You don't have to think, well, these are shoes, they're just off the shelf. Somebody, anybody can make a pair of shoes. That's the easy part of this business. Anybody can do that. But to sell them, to inspire people to buy them, to inspire people to believe, and that's where influencers come in. You do this. You do the influencing, because if it works for them, and people like to associate. You like to associate with people. This is why so many people on the street will be wearing a Nike or an Adidas. Reebok is down a bit these days, but they used to be at the top. In fact, when I left in 1999, the end of 1999, we were number one sports globally. We were number one, taking Nike, overtaking Adidas, and so my journey was done at that time. The pleasure, the challenges, they were over for me. But we went one, and getting back to number one, that's a tough job. But there's something good to get from. There's a springboard, and there are so many stories around in America. So many things that happen that it's a brand that really is now looking. It's looking for that next spring, that next bit of luck, that opportunity, and I think it's around right now.
Now, Joe, let me ask you this. I know you've lived a great life, and you've seen, the riches of the world and the nicest, hotels and planes and all that stuff, and you've seen that side of life. Would you classify yourself as a materialistic person, or could you go and slum it, so to speak, and get your hands dirty if needed? Like, when you're building a business, it's not pretty every day. There's a lot of moments you want to hide under your desk and maybe cry even sometimes, because you're just like, wow, you know, you really kind of got to reinforce what the mission is again to get you refocused. But as a human being, would you say you're very materialistic, or would you say, you know, I'm kind of an ordinary person. There's a couple things I really love. I love good quality, but other than that, you know, I can make it work.
Well, I think you can be both. I think you can like some of the things in life. You can enjoy some of the things in life, but to be honest, I mean, right now at my age, I can't do too many of the tough things in life. But getting my hands dirty is not a problem. You know, I like. We don't like big houses. We just like houses that are very, very nice that we can live in, and we like traveling.
Yes.
So we still travel. We get in the car and we drive, and we'll stop and we'll sort of stay at a Mercure or an Ibis hotel. We don't need to stop at the biggest place in town at all. In fact, we like to be sort of unseen. We like to go and just enjoy life. In fact, I've got 2 emails in today from friends. Of course, it's getting to Christmas, so we're all wishing each other Christmas. And the guy in Switzerland, another one in Germany that are just looking forward to next year, because I'll be traveling. We'll be traveling down into Switzerland. And we'll be traveling to Germany, into Munich, where we have the distribution. And we'll be traveling to Italy, to Varese, and we'll be walking up that mountain again and sitting at the top, just sharing a nice glass of wine and looking out over the Italian lakes. You know, everybody can do that. You don't need to be rich.
No.
You just be fit enough to climb the mountain.
Italy's a very special country, though. My goodness. Like, you know, when we went to Europe for the first time, my wife and I just thought, oh my God, like there's so many beautiful parts in Italy, you know, and we went from Rome to Florence, down to the Amalfi Coast. For me, the Amalfi Coast, though, because I love the water, that Tyrrhenian Sea there by the Amalfi Coast, it spoke to my soul. And there's trips, though, and I'm sure you can attest to this, they kind of change you. Like, there's certain trips I can feel myself, the perspective I got, there's no amount of money that could ever give that to me. You know what I mean?
Well, in fact, this is why I retired. I retired because every other week I'd be at 35,000 feet, flying out to some fairly exotic or important place for Reebok. I'd be picked up by a limousine. I would be taken to the best hotels. We'd then dine in the nicest areas, and we'd talk through the business. I wasn't important to the business in terms of making decisions then. I was more the ambassador. But you know, at that point, I was thinking, well, why am I doing this? You know, it's nicer to kick your shoes off and walk along the shore somewhere. Just enjoy, like say, the Amalfi Coast. Really nice place that we can now visit. We can just, where we are in France, we can drive everywhere. And, you know, we're 3 hours away from the Côte d'Azur, if you want to be the Côte d'Azur. You know what I mean? And we went to Monaco. We go to Monaco now quite often. But, you know, during my time, I was invited to the palace in Monaco. And I'm sitting down there and drinking Prince Rainier's champagne and having a chat. You know, it's fantastic to do, but you know, to do that every day, you would lose sight of reality. You'd lose what life is about, because life is about, well, let's go down here and walk around some of the towns, some of the villages, you know, like you say, the Amalfi Coast, go down into Italy. The place that we had in Italy was Varese. Varese is just north of Milan, and it's just into the foothills of the Alps. And so we would go into those foothills and say, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. So, you know, and it's, when you're working, you don't get that much time to spend and enjoy. Now we can go and enjoy with all the people that are now no longer distributors, but are still very good friends. So it really is good fun.
That's great.
And it's surprising that writing the book has brought a lot of those friends out, and a lot of people from America saying, hi, you know, remember? Of course I remember. You know, the guys who were in Boston, one of the guys is now in the northwest. He moved into Adidas, into Nike country. It's like, but you know, 50 years have gone by, you know, and you're thinking, wow, that's incredible. But they're still there and they still remember, you know, and I think this is what the book is doing for me. And this is why now my ambition now is to get it to number one. Good. No point in writing if it's just going to. Let's read it. So it's getting it to number one, which is what we did with the Reebok brand.
Joe, I'm happy that you wrote the book because, you know, it shows you're not greedy. Because there's a lot of I've met so many people out there that they say that they have the secret sauce, you know, quote unquote. They don't want to give their secrets away. And I just think about, you know, when I'm your age, and, you know, when you were my age, it's two different generations. But I think it's always great to pass down. I think of things of a fine tailor, you know. Where I live, it's hard to find a fine tailor now because a lot of the kids didn't take, you know, dad or grandpa's, you know, skill at tailoring. Certain little things that you kind of look for. But your book, it encompasses and documents kind of your journey. And I like to ask this question. Could you imagine back in the day, because you've heard of vlogging now, right? Where YouTubers take the camera and they vlog their daily journey. What do you think if Reebok and you had a vlog back in the day where you just had a camera kind of following your everyday, what kind of finished product do you think you'd have for people to watch on a video?
I think that's amazing. I mean, it's like trying to move these things beyond that sort of journey. You know, you think, well, I don't know. Some people would be amazed at what we did, and I think probably I would be amazed also.
No, it's a fair answer. As we wrap it up, my last question to you, Joe, is, and I always like to ask the question, is what can I do for you, my friend? I appreciate your time today, and you know, it's just been a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for sharing some of your mind and soul with the audience.
Well, for me, it's to read the book, which I'm sure you have, and to pass the message on, and to say, you know, this is an interesting story. And I think, you know, a lot of people have come back to me and say they enjoyed the book, they enjoyed the story, and I think if we can get the book to sell, I think this will help the brand, because for whatever, I'm still passionate about the Reebok brand. I still think it has a long way to go. And I think it has a lot of new messages to give to people, because, you know, it is a brand for the people. And I'm still around, just as, you know, Nike's guy is still around there. But Adidas don't have people like that. Right now, you know, we have a history. And I think that history is really worth people reading, instead of just saying, Reebok, yeah, that's a shoe. No, it's a lifestyle. It's what happens. There's a story. So, you know, I'd like people to think that this is more than just another piece of footwear on a shelf with a brand name to it. I'd like people to understand that brand name, and if they can feel some of the passion that went into that. You know, I unfortunately lost my brother in 1980, just when we were to break through, just at that time. And I suppose it redoubled my efforts to get this brand out there, to what his dreams were as well as my dreams. So, you know, when people look at that and read it, you know, there is some suffering. Like you were saying, not every day. Some days you feel like crying, but you get up in the morning and feel that's going to be a great day. Every day is going to be a great day. You know, the three most important things for me in business was fun, fun, and fun. If you're not having fun,
yes.
If you're not having fun, you're not going to enjoy your life, and you must enjoy it. You must be in love with it, and it's got to be something that you really want to get up in the morning to do it.
And Joe, this is why I love doing these interviews. You know, it started out as a passion project for me, and I've done TV and radio, you know, a bit before, and I said I really want to just talk to some of the greatest minds in the world as a conversation. And our whole mantra is curiosity. And it's I try to picture, it's like when I talk to somebody on the podcast or the show here, I just want the audience to listen as though you're looking at two old friends having a conversation. And that's why I never send questions over, because I just like the conversation to flow and go where it may be. You know what I mean?
Okay, yes, that's fine by me. I don't mind. Either way, I don't mind. It's, but when you start talking about brains, I'm no brain surgeon. I'm probably very dumb because I just focused.
No.
I wasn't willing to go places. I just wanted to do one thing, go, let's make this work.
And I want everybody to know, if you check out Joe's Instagram, we'll link everything up. He's definitely a sneakerhead. I mean, he's every picture I see you in, you're in a pair of Reeboks. And I noticed that there's never any dirt on them. You keep those things crystal clean. That's a big thing for me. The shoes are always looking fresh.
Well, I believe that's important as well, especially if you're an ambassador for the company. Yes, you're really going to make it. But yes, I mean, you go through life, you do many things. I've had a new hip, and I've also had a new knee because I competed at badminton, I played sport, I did running, I did things, but it wears you out. It does wear. And I find these days that wearing Reebok, somehow I can manage all day wearing Reebok. Some shoes, if I wear a street shoe, it doesn't do my knee or my hip any good. But Reeboks, nice and cushioned, they work for me. They do indeed.
And last but not least, Joe, the stage is yours. How can people find you? Again, we'll put all the links and everything in the show notes, but how can people reach out to you and where can they grab your book?
Well, they can grab the book through Amazon or any reasonable retailer these days, not shoe retailer, book retailers, bookshops. They will have the book. But we do have, if you want to reach out, we have jwfosterheritage.com. That is our website because we're talking about the Foster family as much as Reebok. So that's our website. So if anyone wants to speak to us, they can see us on Instagram, they can see us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. Yes, and Twitter. Julie tells me. Yeah, she keeps me well prompted.
And again, everybody listening, please give my regards to Julie. I appreciate her setting all this up. Last but not least, can you just say, hi, my name is Joe Foster, founder of Reebok, and I've been on the Ryan Holtz Show podcast. You don't have to necessarily say it in that order either.
No, I probably can't remember in that order. But I'm Joe Foster. I'm the founder of Reebok, and it's such a pleasure to be on Ryan Holtz
Show podcast.
Perfect. Show podcast. All right, show podcast.
I love it, Joe.
It's incredible.
Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate chatting with you, and thank you for giving me an hour and 8 minutes of your life, my friend. I really appreciate that.
That's no problem. It's surprising. It's wonderful. I can speak to people all around the world, and it's so good to be speaking to you now. So enjoy the rest of your day. You've got plenty of it. I think I've only got, we're 5 o'clock here now. I think it's time for opening a bottle or something.
Yes, go enjoy. I'm going to take off here. I will send everything over to Julie once it's up and ready. And don't be a stranger. I'm sure we'll talk again.
It's a pleasure. And yes, I would love to. And if we're ever over there in Vancouver, yes, why not?